You are the most connected and the best informed and the most powerful generation, we always say, because you understand more about the power of digital and social media and how you can use that to do many things, including driving change. And here to talk to you about the ways in which social media can empower people to change the world, please welcome a social entrepreneur who has over 15 million followers across social media and who has raised over $1 million for the not-for-profit Litters of Light this year alone. That's $1 million this year. Please welcome Jerome Jarre. Ça va?
Hey.
Bienvenue.
Merci. Hello, everybody.
Jerome is cool.
Where should I sit?
Anywhere you like.
That's awesome.
Jerome is cool, but with him we're going to introduce another counselor who you saw briefly again yesterday, who's also dead cool. He's a rapper, an artist, a writer, an education activist, and probably one of the best speakers I've ever seen. Akala.
Good afternoon, all. Or evening, should I say. How you doing? Beautiful. So, Jerome, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey, or share with us a little bit of your personal journey?
First of all, to be honest with everybody, I tried to cancel speaking 3 times. I almost tried again 5 seconds ago because, like, all the stories that we are hearing here, I'm feeling so inspired, and I just made me realize how fortunate I've been. And I mean, my story will definitely not make you cry, you know. I was born in France, healthy, with, I didn't miss of anything. I've always had food, I've always had a roof. I didn't have a dad, but my mom was loving me enough, so it never felt like I didn't have a dad. And anyway, I had this very normal, comfortable, no-risk life until at 19, I was in this business school, and I realized this is too safe. Like, you're not gonna be happy here. So why not spice up life a little bit? And so I quit the business school, and my mom was really disappointed. She told me I would have to sustain for myself starting now. And so, since I only have $1,000, I decided to spend it on a flight ticket to China. And
Any reason, China?
I arrived in China with pretty much nothing. I stayed in China for a year and a half. Started a few startups there, then backpacked around Europe, Canada, and then I found myself in New York 2 years and a half ago, and like that was the end of the risky. Like, I needed something to happen because
You needed some stability now.
yes, because I arrived in New York with $400, and so I had to do something. And so either I was gonna join like I was gonna find a job, which was like the opposite of why I quit this business school, or either I was gonna start something myself. And if I would, and that's when I heard about this new app I was launching that same day. It's called Vine, 6-second videos. And nobody knew what it was. Everybody was very confused about it online. I was seeing people saying, like, what is this stupid thing? And so I decided that was perfect. I would spend the next few months figuring out what it is and getting good at it. And so so Vine is 6-second videos. And so I had to start making those videos. And at that time, I had zero background in anything artistic. Like, can dance, can sing, can act. So what do you do in videos? And so I was walking in the streets of New York looking for ideas of what I would do, and then I realized this one thing that was bothering me with people is that they don't talk to each other. They're kind of scared of each other. We're all in. It doesn't seem like we're all living free. Like, you're in one of the wealthiest cities in the world, New York City, and yet people look miserable. Like, they don't smile at each other. They don't dance. They don't sing. Like, we are robots. So I was bothered by that, And instead of staying bothered about it, I decided that I should just act like,
did you do?
I should just act like I wanted people to act. So I started dancing in the street. I started singing in the subway. I started just loving life.
And putting that on the Vine.
And shooting it on this app, Vine, 6-second videos. And what happened next was very overwhelming.
He's being a bit humble there, you know. 15 million followers and 1 billion
so
views.
in June 2013, that's when I moved from having a few hundred followers to 1 million in a month. And the next month, you know, moved to like 2 million and 4 million.
And do you think there's a secret to that growth, or just it occurs?
So I think what happened is people could really relate to this. They could relate to this envy of being free. Like we're not free if our fear are locking us down from living life to the fullest. Like, how many people here would love to? I mean, maybe here a lot of people are free, but how many people, when you work in New York, would love to be dancing and jumping around, or just dressing up as you want, or just our fears completely limit us, and I think people could relate to this, and that's why they were following the idea more than myself. They were following this concept of loving life.
And so how do you turn that into a living? You know, it's great, you've got all these followers, you've got all this support, but how do you turn that into actually a job? You said you didn't want to get a job. How did Vine become a job?
So after that, I had to figure out how to make a living, and so advertising is the first thing that came. Obviously, like all those brands where companies were interested in tapping into those views, and at first, when you don't even have a place to stay, like for the night, you're gonna work with those brands. And so at first, I was like, that was amazing. Like I was happy to work with those brands, and I actually started an agency so that all my friends that have followers could also work with brands, and that was very fun for a little while until you realize how empty the advertising world is.
More.
Like there is no purpose behind it.
Hope there's not any advertising execs in the
You know
house.
that?
No,
Right?
I hear you.
I know.
I hear you.
So I took a big break from advertising, but then it hits you again. Like you run out of money. I haven't figured out another model yet, but
Fair enough.
But I've done something cool with a brand recently, so to be honest, like Pepsi came to me and they were like, we want you to be our ambassador for the year. Like we're gonna give you the money you want, and you're gonna sell Pepsi in your videos. And at first I said, there is absolutely no way. Like I don't even eat meat. I'm vegan. Do you think I'm gonna sell Pepsi to my followers? Like there's absolutely no way I'm gonna do that. And then it hit me that instead of just saying no, maybe I could try to convince them to do something better than that, to do something meaningful. Like, and so that was a long process of negotiating, but we ended up creating a campaign that didn't involve one product. Like I told them straightforward that I wouldn't promote Pepsi itself. I wouldn't sell the product, but instead we would help together this non-profit called Liters of Light. I don't know if some of you guys are familiar with them, but they're people that are really shaking the light problem right now. Like there's 1 billion people that don't have light around the world, that live in darkness, and those people actually use recycled bottle and put LED and little solar panel and stuff to give light to the people. But it's not linked to any company. It's not linked to the government. So once they know how to build those lights, they have light forever. You know, like Mohammed Genius was saying, it's like a way of it's sustainable. You know.
Yeah.
And so I convinced Pepsi that they would give $1 for every time some of my followers tweet about this nonprofit, and then they did it up to, like, we raised $1 million for them. Wow. And that was thank you. I feel like that was a small thing, but that's already like showing that there is a way of convincing those brands to do better things than just
Amazing.
selling the product.
Using your popularity for social good, I
Uh-huh.
suppose.
But something I really wanted to add is that you don't have to have millions of followers to do big things on social media. That all my friends from social media that have a lot of followers, they're all moving in LA now. They're all pursuing acting career, Hollywood career, and I think this is creating a misunderstanding that a lot of people right now think social media is like the real world, where it's a pyramid, like society, where there is the famous, the rich at the top, and then that have millions of followers, and then at the bottom there is those that have a couple of followers, and they don't have a voice and stuff. But that's not how the internet works. On social media, even if you have a couple of followers, if you say something really that other people will support, agree, this thing can go viral, huge, overnight. Like that's how it started for me, you know. In June, 2 years ago, like I started that video. I made this video called "Why Is Everybody Afraid of Love?" and that's the first video that got viral for me. And I only had a couple of hundred followers, and overnight I had millions of eyes on me, and went on TV and everything in the US. But it starts. Like, you don't have to have the millions of followers to have a voice online.
Yeah.
And that's a huge misunderstanding. And I really think we are not using social media at its full potential, and it's a huge waste right now. And if there is some people in the room that have ideas for how to use social media better to help the world, I would love to chat with you guys later. Because I think it's like we were given this spaceship, each of us, for free, and we're so excited about it that all we are doing with it is like most people just like go to the groceries with the spaceship, you know, instead of going to the moon. I really think we need to take social media to the next level and realize that social media is why we are the most powerful generation ever, right? Like Mama Genius was saying it, but only if we use it. So
It's a tool. Yeah, amazing, man.
but enough talking about me. I want to know about your story now.
Well, I suppose my story, I mean, I grew up in London, but in kind of, I suppose, in some ways, different circumstances. A lot of people around the world that don't live in rich countries still tend to believe, as my grandparents believed, that the wealthy countries are paradise. And of course, there's advantages, but I grew up in a kind of what in London especially is like a stereotype, single parent, inner city family. We lived in a council house. You know, London, contrary to what most people know, is actually quite a violent place. The first time I saw someone get stabbed, I was 12. As a young Afro-Caribbean male, you have to make your peace with the fact that 11, 12, 13, these ages, police harassment will be a normal part of your existence. It's almost like a coming-of-age ceremony. Whether you're involved in criminal activity or not, it's part of the legacy of race and class in that society. So even though economically we were poor, culturally I was very rich. And this was the dichotomy that I suppose has led me on the journey that I've gone on. My stepdad was the stage manager of London's leading Afro-Caribbean theatre, the Hackney Empire, in the 80s. I saw a range of productions and great artists perform there. My real dad was a sound system DJ who I used to go and stay with, and that sort of inducted me into music. So I would say on the one hand, you know, economically, yes, there was poverty, there was challenges, there was structural disadvantage, but culturally I was given a certain amount of kind of equipment and confidence to move forward, I think, I would say.
So how did this story like help you do what you do today?
Well, I think we're all a product of our journey, our personal journey. And I'm primarily a music artist. I think part of that is actually, ironically, negatively or positively, been shaped by the expectations of the society. When I was a child, I wanted to be an astronaut. And it just didn't seem, actually, big up to the gentleman who just came on who was an astronaut. It didn't seem like the profession I was going to end up pursuing, you know, for various reasons through school or whatever else, even though I did quite well in school. So music was something I was steered towards, partly because my culture was heavily musical, and partly just because it felt like a viable space. But I went through many different experiences in my journey, getting to what eventually was what I wanted to do, which was make independent, socially conscious hip-hop music. I played football for 5 years, played for West Ham and then for Wimbledon as a youth team player. I opened a family restaurant in Cyprus. These were all experimental things that we did, and then eventually it got me to a stage where I was ready almost, and the time was right to sort of pursue a career in music. And it was a really interesting period in time. My first album came out in 2006. We started the independent company in 2004. What was fascinating about this is that it was at this kind of almost apex point between the old industry and the new. So when I first started making music, you needed to shoot big budget videos on film and try and get on MTV to be seen at all. And by 2006, that wasn't the case anymore. This thing called YouTube existed, social networks had come. There was all this plethora of online materials that were essentially free. The technology for filming had changed. You could buy a £3,000 camera and shoot something that used to look at the same grade as what film looked like. So as an independent artist, all of this gave me the capacity to create a viable company that I've probably performed in 50 countries over the last decade and a half, and all of that is a product of having these online tools. But what I've always wanted to do, similar to yourself, is use any platform I'm given in a socially conscious way, in an educational way. So in 2009, I set up the Hip Hop Shakespeare Company with some of my partners, which is a theatre production company. We do live touring productions. Our last production was essentially a concept album version of Richard II, which we're revamping to tour again next year. We do educational programs, workshops, residencies, long-term collaborations with schools or universities, both nationally and internationally. And essentially, our vision is about democratizing Shakespeare. Shakespeare's been used, anyone from the UK will know this, but even further afield, almost to beat young people over the head with. You're not quite smart enough to understand the genius of Shakespeare that's just way up here. And yes, absolutely, Shakespeare was a genius, and his work is very challenging. But it was also performance poetry and popular performance poetry at the time at which it was produced. So how have we come to be so intellectually intimidated by it? Similarly with hip-hop, a lot of people base their vision of hip-hop on the kind of most commercial 10%. But there's this whole cultural genesis that goes back through jazz and blues and gospel, ultimately to the griot, which is a poet, praise singer, historian of the medieval West African empires. The art of rapping, of rhythmically rhyming over the beat of a drum, has all this genesis. So what we do is also about re-educating people about hip-hop's historical genesis, but then its space as a socio-political voice, which is how I came into it. The first person I ever saw give a lecture was KRS-One, a hip-hop artist who came from the ghetto, was homeless at one point, and went on to teach philosophy at Yale University, among many other things. So hip-hop had this self-confidence, where you had these young people from the ghetto who were saying, my opinion on politics or physics is important. The first time I got interested in physics, it was a rapper from the Wu-Tang Clan called the RZA. And so we've tried to fuse all of these different influences and then use hip-hop as a space for inspiration and dialogue, and use Shakespeare in the same way. There's a brilliant Brazilian educator called Paulo Ferreira, and he talks about something called the banking concept of education, where the teacher comes along and says, I'm the teacher, I've got the degree, I know everything, and I'm going to teach you. And that's a very outdated mode of education, which even teachers acknowledge. Yet still often our school system is based around that globally. We're more interested in dialogue, co-creation, working with young people to essentially teach them to design and think for themselves and really shape the way we do things. So to that end, we have a thing called a peer leader program, which is where we take the most talented, most determined, most tenacious of the young people we find. We train them up in our working methodology. They're usually artists anyway. And then they become part of the touring productions, but also self-employed freelancers who then go and teach other young people. Because one of the brilliant things about online, bringing it back to that, is that because of our online presence, because of, I did a TED Talk, and because of the way online works now, we don't have to sell our work. We've never marketed our work. We've just simply been coping with demand. And so creating this self-fulfilling and self-sustaining workforce has been one of the ways in which we've tried to kind of cope with demand. So that sort of encapsulates all of that, and I think we've got time for about 2 questions, apparently. Absolutely. Yeah? Okay. All right. So I suppose that really it's a new world with that technology, and what you've been doing on Vine and what we've tried to do through online platforms is show that as much as people are saying this to this generation, you're important, you're the most important generation in history, you've got so much to tell the world. This is all true, but you've also got so much new opportunity that didn't exist before. And it's how do we use that for positive or negative? How do we use that to shape the world? How do we put, even as consumers now, all of these different online platforms has meant in something like the music industry, you can be a politically conscious underground hip-hop MC and perform in 50, 60 countries without being on the radio or being on a major label. That simply was not possible 20 years ago. And so how do we use these tremendous platforms to push what we think is important and to use figures that we can now make popular and make visible to shape kind of ideas around government and education and ultimately the world, I think, is the challenge. So it's amazing to see.
I think the same thing is going to happen with social media that we are seeing with business, and we're talking about business now. Like when Mohamed Yunus made the difference between a business that is just chasing money and a business that is okay with making money but chasing purpose.
Absolutely.
The same thing is with content, like when you watch something online, when you like it and when you share it, like was this piece of content created to do some good for the world, or was it only 100% for likes, followers, advertising money, all of that? And I think we're not making yet, we don't have yet this conversation making this distinction, but as the internet gets more and more crowded, maybe this will be something to look for.
And hopefully those will be the things that cut through. The things that have that social purpose and that kind of activist element to it and that shaping element to it, cut through all of the stuff that's on the internet. And we have to keep the internet democratized. Like many other industries, the internet is at a stage in its life where it's become such a massive part of our presence, such a massive revenue generator, that there is going to be the inevitable struggle that there has been over so many other industries.
And it is democratized. It's a complete illusion that people with millions of followers can do more online than people with less followers. It's not true. And in fact, I know some people that have 100 million followers cross-platform. They can't do anything to help the world. They can't even help one person because they don't have freedom. They have managers, agents, and
they don't have freedom of speech.
They don't have the freedom.
Even on the web.
With 100 followers, if you're free, you can change the world. Because just say, I don't like this, who's with me, and gather people around it. I was talking with this guy that created this platform for petition the other day, and that is very successful online. And he was telling me all our biggest petitions that have really changed things, changed corporations or government laws or anything, they all got, 99% of them got started by people with 100 followers.
There you go.
And then later you have someone with millions of followers that come in and support it, but the change can come from anywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. There you go.